Chichen Itza, one of the new 7 wonders of the world. And coming here and looking at everything they have to offer, it truly is. The first thing that we saw after going through the entrance and past all the vendors was the pyramid. And following the group, it took me a moment before I realized I was in the ball court. For anyone not familiar with the Chichen Itza ball court, this was a place where they played a game sort of like tennis and soccer. It was with a rubber ball, and they weren't allowed to use hands or feet, and they had to get the ball in the hoop. Now the hoop is sideways, and it is high up on the wall, as you will shortly see. According to our guide, the game could be played for just fun, but it also had a lot more significance as well, such as during the early period, it prevented wars because instead of going out and slaughtering each other, groups would meet here on the ball court and play. The loser, the captain, would offer his head and be decapitated, so the casualty of war would be won. During the later period, the game probably got more bloody during the planet alignment when they played for the fate of the world. And the ball, well, it was made from liquid latex extracted from rubber trees which grow here. Also, by the way, there are 30 different kinds of snakes in this area.
When there's an alignment in the sky, you walk into a court, you're not considered a human being. You are the positive and the negative forces of the cosmos, and the ball is the sun. Before the sun sets, no matter what, you must knock the ball through that or that ring once. When the ball goes through once, it means you broke the alignment of the sky and the universe that continues to get mankind. That day, ironically, we saw a sport. We have 5 games, each one is 4 points. That's when we saw a sport. These guys, this is what they look like when they walk into the courts.
What our guide is showing us is the carvings on this wall which depict the game, and there's going to be one person where you see right here decapitated, and it looks like the blood is shooting out like snakes. Other than not having a head, he looks alive. These players believe that they became immortal. This court has another amazing feature to it as well. The acoustics of this place is nothing like I have ever heard. The 2 temples on the north and south end, the people did not even have to raise their voices. You can hear just by normal speech. And here is one of the hoops. I mean, can you imagine getting one of the balls through there? Pantley, or the Wall of Skulls, is a T-formed structure, fairly large, that has one side showing skulls and this part here showing griffins eating human hearts, and you also see some skeletal warriors. Besides all the rich colors that these buildings would have had back in its day, the one thing I am not missing seeing is the rack of sacrificed heads which would have been on top of this platform. Our guide likened this building like a memorial to the fallen warriors. I have a hard time wrapping my head around human sacrifice that this culture did. I wonder whether the common people were terrified most of the time. The one cenote, which is north of here, they found a lot of remains from children. So it wasn't just warriors that were being sacrificed. So I had thought maybe not being brave might be a sure way of not being, picked to give your life to the gods. But then you have to also remember that they were immortal if they did this. And immortality is something that most of us crave. We all want to be assured that there is life after death.
Was the heart of the greatest enemy they could capture. The greatest enemy they could capture. These guys were not trained to kill. These armies were extremely well trained, and they were not trained to kill. They were trained to they kept them alive, and the guy that brought it back was the guy that took the heart out. A guy full of courage, a guy full of wrath.
Probably an honor, wasn't it?
The wall of skulls. Each skull, if you take notice, is a little different. Also, these plazas were a bit different than what we're seeing. Back in its day, there were no trees. It was one flat piece of concrete with these platforms on it, richly colored, and only the elite lived in this area. The everyday person lived away from these platforms and provided everything that the elite needed. A chakma, you may know what this is, and if you don't, I will come back to it. I want to point out this bas relief on this platform. Some television shows think that this is an ancient astronaut, but according to our guide, it is a human head inside a snake's mouth with the plumage of an eagle, which, if you're here where I am, this is a motif that goes on and on with the various buildings. Now, a chakma, if you are unaware, this one here is not quite as famous as the one on top of the Temple of the Warriors, but he would have a plate on his stomach, and this is where they would lay a warrior down and take the heart, still beating. This had to be an interesting sight at night. These snake mouths, they would use them to light the city, like lanterns.
When this was going on, were the Dark Ages in European cultures. In European cultures, to build a Gothic church, a castle, or a palace during this time, to take 1, 2, or 3 these had to build that.
Can you imagine? This was built in 5 years, only 5 years, with everyone helping out. There are 91 steps leading up to the top, to the platform, and there are 4 staircases, one on each side of the temple, equaling 364, and then the top is 365, the days of our solar calendar. The larger steps, there are 9, and they symbolize the 9 levels of the underworld. This construction is set so it illuminates on the equinoxes. The snake's mouths that are at the north end of the temple have this interesting light shadow show where it looks like the snake is coming down the temple or going up depending on whether it's spring or fall. Anyway, this thing is huge. I'm walking around here to the other sides. It's interesting that people used to be able to climb up to the temple itself. I mean, that had to be an extraordinary climb. These steps are extremely narrow. What I read on the internet is that it closed in 2006 from climbing because one tourist ended up slipping and falling, and unfortunately to their death. I did see a YouTube video of someone taking that climb back in 2004, and just seeing it with my fear of heights, I'm not sure that I would have been able to climb up even if I had been allowed. But I hope that if I had been allowed, I would have taken that leap of courage and done it anyway. So I'm almost to the other side, which rarely gets photographed. It's a bit rougher, as you will see. Another thing that I didn't mention is this building also has that strange acoustic quality like the ball court. And with the Mayans' phenomenal understanding of astronomy, the priest kings easily could make a quote theatrical eclipse to wow the masses. Probably a very handy tool to wow the masses and probably keep them alive and kicking. Here is an excavation that they were doing, and this right here is the Temple of the Warriors, where the more famous Chakmol is. According to our guide, the one doing the sacrifice did not plunge the dagger in like we see oftentimes in Hollywood, but it was more of a slice, a very surgical slice that allowed them to pull the heart out still beating. Their knives during this time were made from stone. The little faces along the walls are carved strings of chalk masks. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And the large mask is the god Kukulkan emerging from the jaws of the plumed serpent. The building is 40 feet high and 133 feet wide, and this right here is the 1,000 Columns group. These were built between 900 AD and 1200 AD. There's remains of stucco covering, which would have been painted in different colors, and the colonnade support a frieze of masks of chalk and round shields. You know, I still can't believe that I'm here. Stamping through ancient ruins has been a lifelong dream of mine, and coming here has just been absolutely phenomenal. The only thing that I could improve on is more time at the site. Doing a bus tour, we're only allotted so much time, and I am just getting through as much as I can during our free time before we have to head back to the bus. Advice for anybody coming for the first time? Buy yourself a guide to the site. That way you know where everything's at and which things are of the most interest. Now, I knew about the ball court and the pyramid, and of course the Temple of the Warriors and the observatory, which will be on the next iMovie. Chichen Itza is way too big to do an iMovie with everything in it. It would be like a full-length documentary. It's amazing, you know, how big this place is. It's like 2.5 square miles, and it was just abandoned. And then in the 1840s, they discovered it, took all the trees and grasses and whatnot off of it, and behold, look what they found. And there's yet more to be uncovered. Adios.